Yeah, tell us the story.
Yes, well, as I say, this little fellow, he'd been injured in a accident on a sledge coming down a hill, fell into a fence, and broken his leg. And he had a very thick, shortened one leg, and he had a very thick heel. He'd just limp around, and he was a puny sort of fellow. Anyhow, this dummy chap picked upon him, and doing the same thing as they'd done to me before, only they were worse with him. Well, my blood was boiling when I had to stand alongside and see them taking it out upon him. And so I said, why don't you fight them? Go on, both of us will fight him. Oh, no, he said, no, he said, I mean, I can't fight. I said, neither can I fight. But two of us, surely, if you just hang on to his back, I'll face up to him. Anyhow, I challenged him. I said, well, we'll both of us fight you. Oh, God, he was going to bloody well kill us. And he could have killed us too, because he was about 6 feet tall by then, a tall, raw-boned, gangly sort of a fellow, and I was just a little bit of a straight. And my God, I was frightened. But then all the other kids rallied round me, and they took telling me all the tactics to use facing up to him. So anyhow, we finished work, and here we are, and they're looking forward to it. So there was some disused coke ovens, and here's all the kids standing around in a circle, and I'll hold your coat, Curtis, and all this sort of thing, real urges. And here's this poor fellow there, he didn't want to fight at all, he was crying, really. And anyhow, he faces up to me and he starts sparring with me, and I'm putting up a feeble sort of defence, and I'm saying, get behind him. And I don't want to, and he's sort of dodging round on the perimeter, and the kids are all howling, go on, grab him by the neck. And I'm facing up to him, and he's gradually getting me down, really. And I'm retreating, but they push me back into the ring again. I can't run away. And then suddenly, as if there was a ray of sunshine came out. Somebody walked out of the crowd and grabbed hold of this fella, swung him around, and shook him until his bloody head was nearly dropped. His teeth were dropping out. And here's a young, strong coal miner. He says, you bloody miserable bastard, you're fighting these two poor kids. He said, I should kick your bloody ass. And he said, get the hell out of it. And he did kick his ass. And my God, if ever there was a remembrance. And yet, after that, I got the name of being a bloody fighter. These kids would come to me, and I never fought in my flaming life, except with my tongue. And it was remarkable that I overawed fellas that could have killed me, but by facing up to them, yes, and then they'd back off from me. I was surprised, really. I was very relieved too, mind you.
And so, Wattie, it wasn't common, like that sort of standing over or bashing people.
No, but the position I was in was this. That when old time went away, I had to run that run. I had to go and see the brushes. I had to book them for time and all this sort of thing. Well, I'd had no credibility left. If I'd allowed that fellow get on top of me, it was live or die for me. I'd have delivered the shots if I'd allowed it to get away.
You're only little, he was a big man, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a big strip.
Mate, so you had him in an awkward position, didn't you?
Oh, I did. But again, you see, I'd have delivered the shots if I'd allowed that fellow get away with it. But I didn't.
Now, what about Wonthaggi? Violence wasn't common. Fighting was fighting.
No, I can never recall when I would have to use my fists and
Well, there fights in the main street on a Saturday night.
There was occasionally, and I think they were really in the Depression, men came from the city who'd had a little bit of experience in boxing, and because there was no other work, they got a job in the mine, and I think they did get together. There was a Nicky Pryor and
Nicky Pryor. Well, what he had,
he was a bit of a.
Yeah, Nicky Pryor was a fairly good boxer.
They were boxers.
Oh, they were.
Had
a bit of boxer.
What?
Hardo,
yes.
The street brawling wasn't
No. In fact, to tell you the truth, quite a number of drunks would come out of the pub and they'd put a performance on it in the street. Because sometimes these itinerant musicians would come around, with a concertina or play the fiddle. And I remember there was the Higgins. The Higgins, they were
the two brothers. There were two brothers.
And
they worked on the dog watch with you and
that's right, yes. And anyhow, they really put on an act. They'd say, do us the hornpipes. And of course, and the Saturday morning, the street was crowded with shoppers at the co-op, and they would be in the middle of the street and they'd be doing the sailor's hornpipe, and then they'd do the Irish reel and going through the steps, and it was really beautiful to watch them, All inhibitions had gone, and because they were half drunk. And no policeman, but there was one lady who she was what was her name? I forget now, but she was a lady during the week, but when she got a few beers in on Saturday...
What the Irish Spring you're talking about?
Yes, I think it was.
Well, like this bundle in the backyard, but it was back in the neck. She fixed the Irish Queen,
Well, they were frightened.
Why? We lived in the house that she had once lived in, and we'd all heard about the Irish Queen, and she was really a real bitch when she was drunk. And I got up 2 stairs to the bedroom. I came down and she's standing in the middle of my floor. She said to me, "Get out." And I tried to reason with her. She said, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "No, I don't." She said, "The Irish Queen." I said, "Well, I'm Ned Kelly, so get out." So I took her and run her right down. But she was a horror and drink.
Everybody was watching. Everybody in Hazelthorne Street was watching, and it's good enough. Cecil Brown lived up and he said, "I've never seen anything like it." He said, "For anybody to handle Irish Queen like that, well, that was fine."
At the front gate.
Well, you see, normally women, she as I say, she was drunk, and women going about their ordinary shopping, they'd have to move over the other side of the street. Just miss her because the powers of invective were really marvellous. God knows where she learned it.
Maggie was a fairly, the lady, there was a fair, that would be very unusual, because Wonthaggi always struck me as very ladylike. What do you think, Wonthaggi? Oh, I think that's true too, Wendy. There was the occasional ones like there is in every town, but there was quite a few women were sent out of Wonthaggi for 3 years for misbehaviour. That was the type of town it was. If they were known to be too soft for the gentlemen, they were. Did you have any sort of, people talk about brothels and things in the early days, but was there any prostitution in Wonthaggi throughout the 70s?
Well, there was that period.
Lady.
There was that period when Agnes is speaking about.
That's in the 20s.
And I see one of them now. I see 2 of them now, and I often meet them in the street. And funny sort of thing. One of them, I saw her watching the other one come down the street. You should have seen. Look, it would have told picture the expression on her face as she's watching the other one, and they both were in the game. You see, and I see her watching her with this peculiar expression on her face. And this other one's well preserved. I don't know what age she would be, but they were amongst that crowd that were at the time. See, the Italians used to bring the Italian from Melbourne for this crowd. You see up here. They're on a proper game, no way.
Yes, but it wasn't really in a big way. I do remember.
Dignified.
I do remember. Yes, and I remember my sister went to high school when she must have been about 12 years old. And there was one girl in her grade, and the teachers told her that they hadn't to speak to that girl because evidently her mother was one of those, and the little girl was not. That's right. Well, no, she was.
Funny thing about these women who were sent out to Wonthaggi. When was this, Agnes? Before my time. But they were sort of like they were sort of told by the court to leave Wonthaggi or police. One of them, Wendy. Were they Italian women? No. I'm sorry, go on. Brilliant women. One of them rang me up yesterday. she lived outside Dublin now, and she's quite respectable. She wanted me to do something about a meter to get from the queue boy, you know. I just think how times have changed.
Yes, and these days it's merely called expressing your sexuality these days. Well, that's right, yeah. And why not? It's been persisting a long time.
A long time.
I think that. So really, you couldn't say that Wonthaggi was a disorderly town.
No, it was a very conservative town.
In fact,
The
I think
churches were full in those days.
No.
that's right. Well, I just wondered what George meant by a violent town, but I think he must have meant he felt the presence of the mind with us. He didn't like what.
Yes,
We put too much faith in George.
I think he felt that the forces of nature were violent. Because certainly it wasn't a mine, it was a very low standard mine in regard to the type of work that had to be done and the conditions which I don't think would have been tolerated up in New South Wales.
No, but then see, Joe Foster wasn't a violent man. He was a very moderate man.
Sleeping monster.
The political activities that Joe engaged in were violent and all that. That would seem violent then because he's got a political bonus.
Of course, everything's relevant. And in 1949, well, I mean, there was such a transformation. For instance, during the war, there was no strikes at all. But in the previous years, from say 1929 up to the declaration of war 1939, it was a period of strike after strike.
And nobody realised what the Communist Party did in those days. Nobody realised what they did for the Australian working class. Nobody realised what was them. Nobody realised what it was for.
Think about all of these Ruth Blair, Jim Hamilton, new people, and who hadn't known their early struggles.
That's right.
Just the same as children born since 1949, they have no conception of the struggles in the Depression. They themselves at the present time now are parents, some of them are grandparents. But from the end of the war until just recently, they could walk out of one job into another. There was a continually increasing better standard of living, so that they're trying to compare the present day standard of living with the standards that we found when we first moved into Wonthaggi. It's like difference between heaven and hell, you know.
Well, I tell you what, we had all the confidence in the bloody world that block here. We thought we could wreck the world.
Didn't we all? After 1945, the town brought out a book,
Yeah,
the
the
New World.
Yeah, we had to call the confidence.
Can't remember we got that glossy book for that.
Yeah. Now, but look, tell me about the process of coal winning at Wonthaggi. What interests me is that the contract miners, I presume, are better paid than the other miners. Is that right?
They paid on what they produce.
Now, do they on the average earn more?
Yes.
Well, then how come, when there were so many fights with things like about what interests me is that,
Well, irrespective of the merits of any individual case, because the common enemy was the boss, miners united when they knew. Say, for instance, we had on the field classified as what was the expression again? Miners who were inefficient.
Yeah, innocent.
They didn't.
Many.
They'd move into a place where the previous people who'd worked that particular area had made good money. And yet they, through the cabal, they would move into that, and their production was so low that they'd have to be made up to the minimum wage by the management. They were unskilled workers or lazy workers, and generally there was 4 in the party, and naturally enough, if you wanted to get ahead, you wouldn't join a party like that, or you'd get out of it if you hadn't been in it, of course.
Yeah.
So you find that good places followed good miners. A good party could go into what you could call almost an unproductive area and make good money, where the previous people who'd worked it were on the menu.
well, now, wasn't people say who's going to go on strike for a fellow like him?
They did. But because of the union attitude, if we don't stick together, if we start fighting among ourselves, we know these people should be run off the field. They're in a bad name. Wherever they go, they're poor miners. They're not a good example of the miners as a whole. But we've got to stand by them. And everyone knew it, that they weren't worth fighting for, but because of fighting the boss and his ability, we didn't want him to be given the ability to sack anyone, however.
Fallen leg in the court case is an example.
Just another example.
So in fact, there was a unity amongst although different grades
There was not unity. Many a time,
interesting that, because it doesn't happen in a lot of occupations.
many a time it was men among themselves would say, why the hell should we go on strike when I'm useless about it? Everybody knows that they're useless. Why are we losing time for them? That if they were off the field, it would be better for everybody. They knew them. But because of the strength of the union and the unity of men, well, they would come out on strike and last for weeks. For this group of people who would have been better for everybody if they'd been moved off or given a job where they could have loafed all day and they would never have been missed. Say the public service, for instance, where they can work, be on the payroll and never do anything and never be missed.
Yeah, okay. Well, then, what, in your opinion, don't get involved.
No.
Listen, what I was interested in was Wonthaggi as being different to home. Now, I still haven't discovered whether Wonthaggi was sort of living in Wonthaggi was civil. I mean, were people equally close here as they were in the villages at home?
I think perhaps they were broke away from old habits. There wasn't that closeness. Now, for instance, my mother, when she came out here, the first thing she noticed, people hanging out washing on Sundays. Well, to wash on Sundays over in Scotland or England, it was so abnormal that in fact, Monday was the washing day, you see, so that was the first thing, a little thing, but that's the first thing she noticed. So you see, in villages, now in my particular village, they always took very great pride in the curtains they hung up at the window, lace curtains, and the sandstone, the doorstep. You see, that was a thing, and there was a sort of a clannish things that have been handed down from one generation to another. They got into a certain. The First World War certainly did break a certain sequence of events, you may say, but for instance, for the first time, women went into slacks because of war, worked in the munition factory and that on. They cut their hair or they put them up into these snoods, you see, and they started smoking. They started wearing lipstick and that sort of thing, which just a few years before it was unheard of. In my early days, a girl didn't put up her hair into a bun or whatever until she was 18. You see, these things, and the men themselves were very conservative. When I first moved into a mining village, a man would have a blue serge suit on, but he'd have a brilliant scarlet silk necktie around his neck. God knows what for, and but that's the way it was. I never found out the reason. It died out during the war, but that certainly was the...
One thing I thought about the difference between, it's not a difference really, between Britain and Australia in the mining field. It's this loyalty of women to their husband.
Yes, you didn't see that. You didn't see the organisations like you were a part of during the strikes, you know, where the women folk got together and working all together to support their men in the strike.
But they still supported them in Britain, though they didn't have these organisations.
I think perhaps as individuals they did, but they're not
In the women's cooperative movement, they did. I mean, in the Scots where I come from, when there was a strike on, they got busy getting things to help the struggling miners, because let's face it, you don't have to lose a week or a fortnight's work to be in a real jam.
Yeah, they put you back for 2 months.
And immediately relief committees had to get going.
And this did happen in Scotland.
That happened in parts of Scotland, Wendy. I haven't got good experience.
There you were. Did it happen in the shops where you were?
It happened in the shops. But, I mean, you would never, at least I never did, I've never heard a wife, either here in Wonthaggi or in shots, ever condemning her husband for being on strike. They were always loyal to them. I think that's true, Cecil.
Yes, well, I remember after one particularly long strike here in Wonthaggi, where there was 5 months, I think it was, and there was a certain amount of distress. And the Sun newspaper, which was a real red baiter at the time, and they would send up their reporters, and they'd go into their homes, and they would be trying to get the wives to say that their children were suffering and they wished that their menfolk would go back to work and that sort of thing. And do you think that the men should go back now? Do you think they've been fighting 5 months? Do you think that it's been a waste of their time and their money, and you got no relief? It'll take you months and perhaps even years to catch up. And would you go through it all again, wanting the women folk to condemn their menfolk, you see? And it made great headlines if they could get some poor simple woman to say just what they wanted them to say. I remember we were the first to go down at one particular time, and here's all the reporters with their cameras waiting at the pit top for us to go down. Well, they lined half a dozen poor simple unfortunates with the picks over their backs, with their lamps shining in their helmets there, going down the mine, ready to go down into the depths of the mine that has flooded, and rock falls and all the dangers, starving rats waiting for them by the ton when they get down below. And and these men did go down the bloody cage with picks over their shoulders. You see, it was so unreal. And I tried to explain to these fellas, they're just using you. And the reporters say, look here, mate, we've got to make a living just the same as you.
Tell me, when you talk about gas down a mine, what effect does lack of ventilation have on the workers? What have you got it?
Give that one to Cecil. He's better qualified man. Come on.
Well, there was one instance.
Lowenstein chemistry.
There was one instance that came to my mind and actually experienced really, and it was the wheeler going into the working places to pull out full skips for the oncoming shift of miners, so that they'd start with an empty skip to start off with, you see. Well, these places had been closed from the preceding shift, the 4 o'clock the preceding day. And so the wheeler went in, and there was an explosion of gas, and it knocked him down, and something affected his electric. Well, no, it was in the carbide lamp time that day. He went in with his carbide lamp on his head, and of course it ignited the gas, and it blew his lamp out, and the pony walked out behind the pony and the skip out to where the foreman was waiting there, and he said, look, he said, I've been in there, he said, I couldn't pull the skip out. He said, the place blew up and I just ran out after the pony. Oh, he said, I'll lend you my Davies oil lamp to go in and pull that particular skip out, which of course was a criminal tripping on his affair, because
On whose affair? Why?
because, I mean, a place that had been full of gas, it could just have been filling with gas whilst he'd gone in, and it could have set off. You see, gas isn't the biggest danger, it's the disturbance and the ignition of the coal dust mixed with oxygen, and it forms an explosive mixture, almost like well, you sometimes find it in flower wheels, for instance, with this great admixture of flour dust in the air, and for some reason a spark sets it off and it acts as explosive. So that it was criminal on his part to send this boy in with a safety lamp, where he himself should have gone in, put a barrier across it, so that no miners would have gone into it. It would have been fenced off, and everybody that sees a piece of wood across a driveway knows that they shouldn't cross that barrier unless they're authorised to do so, and they take steps to get the gas out of the place, you see. So, of course, this fellow went in. Well, there was a report made about it, and he was demoted. Instead of being sacked complete, he was demoted to working on shipwork. And he was a real tyrant as a little petty boss. But it just shows you how lightly he took it, and yet it was quite commonplace for miners to move into a place, and there might have been a rockfall, and they'd put up come in with their carbide lamps flaring, and it'd ignite the gas. Woof!
Yeah.
Just a pocket of gas, and men got used to it. In fact, they put their lamp onto the end of a stick and just hold it up there. It was a normal thing to do, to get rid of the gas, you see, because the ventilation of the mine was left much to be desired. So, of course, and that no doubt caused the explosion of the mine at out down there on the 20 shaft, not 20 shaft, that's
Yeah.
right, yeah, when those men were killed.
But what you were telling me, that's a bit different to what Korrumburra. You were telling me that just the ventilation, there wasn't enough air down there. It wasn't a gassy mine, Korrumburra, was it?
No, the black damp there.
What's that mean?
Well, that's carbon monoxide, the gas.
It kills-
Well, yeah, look, I thought that Arthur Ward really did a classical job of describing what happened to him, and you've got it on tape.
Yeah.
And that was the result of black damp. There just wasn't any air. Now, I remember in Scotland, I went in the mine, and we used to get to a gate about 100 yards from the colliery. If that gate was open, we went home, because the wind was blowing. It was an east wind, I think it was. It blew this gate, an east wind. We'd go home if the gate was open. Anyhow, we went down that mine one morning, and it was, we were mining something that would be unbelievable, 14 inches of coal. And we just could get in, and there was a little bit of stone on top. And we were lying flat, and it was 14 inches, but it was terrific coal. It was good coal.
In Scotland.
In Scotland, yeah. And we're only filling about 3 or 4 skips, about, about 3 ton of coal. But anyhow, we're making good money in it at the time, and we're well paid for it. And anyhow, it was about 11 o'clock, and what came in, get your tools out. So we chucked all the tools in the skip, and we got out to the bottom, and got up, and the mines inspector, Scottish from Scotland, was there. And he said, the mine is closed. He said, it's no use. He said, this mine can't go on the way you're going. Now, sometime previous to that, the chap I was working with, we were both young chaps, but 21, 22, both of us. And so anyhow, we used to turn about if we filled the skip, I'd push it out. If we filled the skip, he would push it out. And there was a 2-snibble bray, we called it. That was, we had to put 2 snibbles on the skip's wheels. That meant that skip had to go down the syncline without any wheels revolving. And we went down like a cannonball down the syncline. And anyhow, I went down and stuck. So I got out to see what was wrong, and there was a block line right across it was in a gully. There's a gas accumulator.
Down in the bottom.
Down on the bottom. And he was lying right across and this was some time before this.
You bumped into him on the skip?
Yeah, he was lying out behind the skip. He had a skip in front of him.
Oh, I see.
He had collapsed. He
It run into this air
collapsed. Yeah,
the methane.
yeah, metal.
Was he dead?
No, he wasn't dead. But anyhow, I'll never forget when we went up the mine that day at 11 o'clock, and the mine inspector was there and talked to us. I never had such a splitting headache in all my life as I had there. You know, look, I can experience it now. It was that vivid, the experience of this gas, the effect of this methane gas. And, but that man, they never opened it up after that. Yeah. But here,
That was at Korrumburra. You just had this lack of air and this
yeah, well, that's
no energy. You couldn't work.
no, well, you haven't got any, and a terrific attitude. Actually. No. Well, I thought afterward was superb with the way they said it.
Yeah.
You see, all coal seams bleed gas. Coal and gas go together. And so, in some cases, it's a very, very slow process, especially in harder gas. But if you listen quietly, bits of coal keep popping out of the coal face, being forced out by the gas, you see. And it is an efficient ventilation system. Well, it takes away that gas and it never has a chance to accumulate. So that, but where they're driving, heading into new ground, well, sometimes they'll put gas in a pipe, a 2 or 3 inch pipe. Sometimes they'll split the heading in two and put Brattis.
That's what they had at Korrumburra.
I was just thinking about that letter that Jimmy Comerford sent to you. That was really terrific what he gave you. That letter about having the Brattis down the shaft. To split, yes, that's what Cecil's telling you. So you want to hold on to that letter. That's really terrific what he gave you. Yeah?
Well, it's very interesting, but I've got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Well, there's been a lot of bad agreements, especially with Wattie and Russian.
Yes.
Well, they didn't have the experience of coal.
Well, they didn't need experience of coal, really. They were good miners, but their methods of mining were totally different. You see,
They didn't understand it.
the gold mining, for